We are on Genesis 27. We are starting at verse 41 to the end. Kim, you're muted.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Esau hated Jacob because of what he had done to him. He said to himself, "My father will soon be gone, and then I will kill Jacob." But someone got wind of what he was planning and reported it to Rebekah. She sent for Jacob and told him that his life was being threatened by Esau. "This is what to do," she said. "Flee to your uncle Laban in Haran. Stay there with him a while until your brother's fury is spent and he forgets what you have done. Then I will send for you. For why should I be bereaved of both of you in one day?" Then Rebekah said to Isaac, "I'm sick and tired of these local girls. I'd rather die than see Jacob marry one of them." Huh.
Well, why would that even be an option? Because he already said that he wasn't to marry the Hittite women.
Yeah.
All right, Cindy. You
Okay,
ready?
verse 41. The days of mourning for my father. Evidently, Esau also thought his father was on the verge of death. And so, out of respect for his aged father, he postponed murder. Isaac lived another 43 years. Verse 45. Bereaved also of you both in one day? Rebekah understood that she stood to lose both her sons, since, after the murder of Jacob, the avenger of blood, that is, the next nearest relative, would track down and execute Esau. 46, daughters of Heth. These are local Hittite women. And that's it.
Did you say
Oh,
another 43 years?
Yes.
Thank you.
so I have an explanation. That last sentence confused me. When Rebecca went to Isaac and said, "I'm sick and tired of these local girls. I'd rather die than see Jacob marry one of them." She was basically manipulating Isaac into sending Jacob away. So
Or
he wouldn't
giving an
be tempted.
excuse to why she's doing it.
Yeah, like he needs to be sent away so he doesn't marry one of these local girls.
He didn't do anything wrong. We just need to send him where he can get a clean woman.
Yeah.
It's funny you say it's confusing because mine goes into the next chapter. It
Yeah.
finishes the sentence in the mid sentence, finishes in the next chapter.
Yeah. I went ahead a couple of verses and I was like, "Oh, okay, I get it."
Yeah.
Yeah, because she actually manipulates Isaac into sending him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. All right, Gretchen, since Kathy's not here, Gretchen is going to read Worsby.
Isaac, Rebecca, and Jacob departure. And this goes into 28:9. Uh, Finally, the believing family members got together and made some wise decisions. However, there's still some deception in the air because Jacob left home for more than one reason: to protect Jacob's life. Verses 40 to 45. Don't get mad, get even is a popular philosophy, especially among politicians. But Esau practiced both. He carried a hateful grudge against his brother and planned to kill him. After all, if Esau couldn't enjoy the blessing, neither would Jacob. The man who was destined to live by his sword would start by using it first at home. Always close to the family grapevine, Rebecca heard the threat and moved into action. Her plan was to send Jacob to Haran to live with her brother Laban, and then send for him when it was safe for him to return home. Her question: why should I be deprived of both of you in one day? verse 45. Implies that she expected somebody, perhaps God, to avenge Jacob's murder and kill Esau. The few days turned out to be 20 years, and she never saw Jacob again on earth. To secure a suitable wife for Jacob. And this goes from 46 into 28:9. I don't know if you want me to read.
Stepped out of prison looking like he just left his flower tree.
Oh, that Cindy, something's coming through in your background.
Yeah, I just turned it off.
Oh,
Sorry.
no, that's okay. I was like, what's happening? I think stop at the end of 27. Is that what you said?
Well, it's 27:46 through 28:9.
All right, yeah, let's hold on to that
Okay.
because we'll go into that next. All right, 40. Tony Evans actually picks up at 42. 41 was part of Friday. So 42 to 46, Jacob's mother, Rebekah, ever the eavesdropper, found out about Esau's murderous intent in time to hatch another plot. Jacob would flee at once to Rebekah's brother Laban in Haran, hiding out there until Esau's rage could cool. As a positive side effect of this plan, she reasoned that Jacob would also be more inclined to marry someone within their clan rather than he has Hittite Hethite girls that had been making Rebecca's life so miserable. Oh, that's it. That was quick and easy. Anybody else have any thoughts or input for that section? If not, we'll go on and read. My 28 takes a break between 5 and 6 and between 9 and 10. I think we could do like the first two sections, like stop at 9. Because isn't that where you said Worsby? The next section was, Gretchen? Okay. Kim, do you want to read that part?
Yes. Okay, Genesis 28. So Isaac called for Jacob and blessed him and said to him, "Don't marry one of these Canaanite girls. Instead, go at once to Paddan Aram, to the house of your grandfather Bethuel, and marry one of your cousins, your uncle Laban's daughters. God Almighty bless you and give you many children. May you become a great nation of many tribes. May God pass on to you and your descendants the mighty blessings promised to Abraham. May you own this land where we now are foreigners, for God has given it to Abraham." 5. So Isaac sent Jacob away, and he went to Paddan Aram to visit his uncle Laban, his mother's brother, the son of Bethuel the Aramean. Esau realized that his father despised the local girls, and that his father and mother had sent Jacob to Paddan Aram with his father's blessing to get a wife from there, and that they strictly warned him against marrying a Canaanite girl, and that Jacob had agreed and had left for Paddan Aram. So Esau went to his uncle Ishmael's family and married another wife from there, besides the wives he already had. Her name was Mahalath, the sister of Nebaioth, and daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son.
I guess I didn't think about that last week, that he was actually going and marrying Ishmael's daughters, which is Isaac's brother to Hagar.
Isaac's brother.
Isaac and Ishmael
Yeah.
were brothers. So that would have been Hagar's son, the Egyptian woman. So he was actually going and marrying the anti-Israel clan.
I wonder if were all of Esau's wives from Ishmael?
They said they were all Hittites. Wasn't she a Hittite also?
I'd have to go back.
All right, Cindy, what do you got?
Verse 1 and 2. Take yourself a wife from there. Anxious for the safety of her son, Rebekah easily convinced her husband that the time had come for him to seek a non-Canaanite wife back in their homeland, and preferably from near kinsmen, just as Rebekah had been sought for Isaac. 3 and 4. This extra patriarchal blessing unveiled where Isaac was in his thinking. He had come to understand that the divine blessings would go through Jacob, to whom the Abrahamic covenant promises of posterity and land also applied, quite the reversal of prior wishes and understanding. The lack of land possession at that time, described by the phrase, in which you are a stranger, did not deter at all from the certainty of God's promise. Verse 3, God Almighty. Significantly, El Shaddai was the name Isaac chose to use when blessing Jacob. It was the name of sovereign power with which God had identified himself to Abraham in covenant reaffirmation, an encouraging factor to both him and his son. Verse 5, Isaac sent Jacob away, 1928 BC. This must have been a hard departure for the domestic Jacob. Verse 9, so Esau went to Ishmael, marrying back into the line of Abraham through the family of Ishmael seemed to have been a ploy to gain favor with his father and show an obedience similar to his brothers. He hoped by such gratifying of his parents to atone for past delinquencies and maybe have his father change the will. He actually increased iniquity by adding to his pagan wives, a wife from a family God had rejected. And that's it through 9.
So when Isaac married Rebekah, Rebekah was Sarah's brother's daughter, right? Went her father Laban also? Or her brother was Laban?
It would be brother because she said she sent him to his uncle's house. Laban.
When she got there, remember the brother was very interested in all the gold and earrings, and his name was Laban also. So it was Sarah's brother's house.
This says Sarah, wait a minute. Okay. Sarah's father was Terah. Her brothers were Nahor and Haran. Does that answer?
Well, I was thinking though when Abraham sent Eleazar to go get a wife for Isaac, didn't he send him to Sarah's brother's house? Because I think like this is interesting because then Jacob's doing the same thing. He's going to Rebekah's brother. Oh, it's the same brother. Rebecca's brother Laban.
Yeah.
It's the same man. That just hit me. So Jacob is also going to. All right, Gretchen, whenever you're ready.
Isaac, Rebekah, and Jacob departure. Finally, the believing family members got together and made some wise decisions. However, there's still some deception in the air because Jacob left home for more than one reason. To protect Jacob's life. Verses 40 to 45. Don't get mad, get even is a popular philosophy, especially among hold on, my phone just went. But Esau practiced both. I'm sorry. You know what? I started the wrong place.
Okay. Okay.
To secure a suitable wife for Jacob, 27, 30, 46, 28 through 9. Since Esau's two heathen wives were an aggravation in the home, Rebekah used this as an excuse to discuss Jacob's future with her husband. Now that Jacob had the covenant blessing, it was important that he marry the right woman and not one of the pagans in Canaan. Isaac agreed and called Jacob to tell him their decision. When the summons came, Jacob may have expected his father to scold him for what he'd done, but Isaac didn't do that. The old man had been caught in his own net and knew that God's plans were better than his. Not only did Isaac speak kindly to his son, but also he gave him an extra blessing as he left to go on his long journey to Haran. This time it was the blessing of Abraham that was important, the fulfillment of God's promise to bless all the earth through Jacob's descendants. Esau's response to this news was further evidence that he despised everything spiritual, for he went out and took another wife. Because Jacob was looking for a wife among his uncle Laban's children, Esau chose a wife from the family of his uncle Ishmael. Perhaps he thought that this would qualify him to receive some kind of blessing from God, but it only added to the irritation in the home. And that's it. 2:9.
Okay, 28, 1 and 2. Isaac, in rare agreement with his wife, sent Jacob out with a commission against marrying a Canaanite girl. Instead, Jacob was charged to marry one of the daughters of Laban, a near kinsman, just as Isaac had gotten his wife Rebecca through this. Just as Isaac had gotten his wife Rebecca through this interconnected family line. Even in the midst of Jacob's deception, God was at work to keep the line of succession pure. 3 through 5. Isaac reiterated the promise God had made. First to his father, then to him, God would bless Jacob and make him fruitful and multiply, giving his offspring the blessing of Abraham so that he would possess the land. Isaac knew that more was at stake than mere keeping Isaac alive. God had a larger plan in store for Jacob. 28, 6 through 9. Poor Esau, attempting to placate and please his father and possibly get back some of the blessing, tried to emulate what Jacob was doing. So he went to Padan Aram to get a wife, avoiding the Canaanite women that his father Isaac disapproved of. Yet Esau went to Ishmael and married. This was closer to the pure line, but still not the line itself. Clearly, Esau still didn't get the basics of God's promise. He did what made sense to him based on what he knew, never realizing that this wasn't the righteous action that God wanted. So his first two wives were Hittites, and then he married into Ishmael's family. It sounds like kind of mimicking what Jacob was doing. Any other thoughts or insights?
Hagar was Egyptian.
Yeah. Yeah, so Ishmael would have been part Egyptian. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, my Bible said it was 400 miles.
400 miles to Laban's?
Yep.
Did it give
That's
an
long.
address for that?
That's along Haran, Haran.
400 miles to Haran?
Yep. I'm trying to remember how far it was for Isaac to go get Rebecca. Seems like that was a long.
450. 450.
The things you do for love.
I think it's interesting too because like when I connected that Laban was the same person, like when they came to get Rebecca, he was all interested in what he was going to get out of it. And when Jacob arrives, he's doing the same thing then.
Here's a profile on Laban. Do you want to hear that?
Sure.
He controlled 2 generations of marriages in the Abrahamic family, Rebecca, Rachel, Leah. Benefited financially. He's from Haran. His relatives are Bethuel. His sister is Rebecca. Brother-in-law Isaac. Daughters Rachel and Leah. Son-in-law Jacob. Laban's story is in Genesis 27, 43 through 31.
Yep.
That's about it. Well, there's more, but I wasn't going to read all of it.
Okay. All right. Kim, while you're on the line, do you want to does anybody else have anything else they want to add to this section? If not, then I'll have Kim do 10 to the end there, Kim, I think 22.
Okay. Sorry. So we're on 28:10.
Yeah.
This is the story of Jacob, and there's a little summary. Jacob did everything, both right and wrong, with great zeal. He deceived his own brother, Esau, and his father Isaac. He wrestled with an angel and worked 14 years to marry the woman he loved. Through Jacob, we learn how a strong leader can also be a servant. We also see how wrong actions will always come back to haunt us. And then starting with verse 10, Jacob starts a family. Jacob's dream. So Jacob left Beersheba and journeyed toward Haran. That night, when he stopped to camp at sundown, he followed a rock for a headrest. He found a rock for a headrest and lay down to sleep, and dreamed that a staircase reached from earth to heaven, and he saw the angels of God going up and down upon it. At the top of the stairs stood the Lord. I am Jehovah, he said, the Lord God of Abraham and of your father Isaac. The ground you are lying on is yours. I will give it to you and to your descendants, for you will have descendants as many as dust. They will cover the land from east to west and from north to south, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through you and your descendants. What did you want me to read through?
The end.
15.
22.
What's more? Okay. What's more, I am with you and will protect you wherever you go and will bring you back safely to this land. I will be with you constantly until I have finished giving you all I am promising. Then Jacob woke up. God lives here, he exclaimed in terror. I've stumbled into his home. This is the awesome entrance to heaven. The next morning, he got up very early and set his stone headrest upright as a memorial pillar and poured olive oil over it. He named the place Bethel, House of God, though the previous name of the nearest village was Luz. And Jacob vowed this vow to God. If God will help and protect me on this journey and give me food and clothes, I will bring me back and will bring me back safely to my father. Then I will choose Jehovah as my God. And this memorial pillar shall become a place for worship, and I will give you back a tenth of everything you give me.
Notice there that tenth is voluntary. It was not demanded. He chose, just like Abraham did to Melchizedek.
I guess my very first impression of this verse 20, if God will help and protect me on this journey and give me food and clothes and will bring me back safely, then I will choose Jehovah as my God. It's like he puts a condition on it.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like if you do that, like, is he doing that, or is it like a fleece? Like, if he does that,
Right.
then I'll believe it's you and I'll serve you then.
I didn't know how to take that.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts?
Oh,
Mine
here.
just, oh, I'm sorry,
Oh, go
Kim.
ahead. Well, there is a footnote for that. Was Jacob trying to bargain with God? It is possible that Jacob, in his ignorance of how to worship and serve God, treated God like a servant who would perform a service for a tip. Or is it possible that Jacob was not really bargaining, but pledging his future to God? In effect, he was saying, since you have blessed me, even though I don't deserve it, I will promise to follow you. Whether Jacob was bargaining or pledging, God blessed him, but God also had some difficult lessons for him to learn. So we don't know.
Mine goes to the part or refers to just being Abraham's grandson was not enough. Jacob had to establish his own personal relationship with God. God has no grandchildren, and each person must have a personal relationship with him. It's not enough to hear wonderful stories about Christians in your family. You need to become part of the story yourself. So this is where he found out that
That's a good point. I mean, Abraham, the father of faith, was his grandfather. If there's nothing else, Cindy, whenever you're ready.
Okay, overview 10 to 15. For the first time, and significantly, while Jacob was on his way out of the land of Canaan, God revealed himself to Jacob and confirmed the Abrahamic covenant with him in all of its three elements of land, seed, and blessing. Later, God would remind Jacob of this event when he instructed him to return to the land. And Jacob would remind his household of it when he instructed them to cleanse their homes before they could return to Bethel. Verse 11, a certain place. Identified in verse 19 as Bethel, about 50 miles north of Beersheba and about 6 miles north of Jerusalem. There, Jacob spent the night in an open field. Verse 12, a ladder. Angels of God were ascending and descending. This is a graphic portrayal of the heavenly Lord's personal involvement in the affairs of earth, especially as they related to divine covenant promises in Jacob's life. This dream was to encourage the lonely traveler. God's own appointed angelic messengers ensured the carrying out of his will and plans. More than likely, the angels traversed a stairway rather than a ladder. Verse 15, we'll keep you, we'll bring you back. A most timely, comforting, and assuring promise, which remained engraved on Jacob's heart during his sojourn in Haran. His forced departure from Canaan did not and would not abrogate any of God's promises to him. Overview 18 to 21. A pillar. Marking a particular site as of special religious significance by means of a stone pillar was a known practice. A libation offering, a change of place name, and a vow of allegiance to the Lord in exchange for promised protection and blessing completed Jacob's ceremonial consecration of Bethel, that is, house of God. Verse 22, a tenth. Tithing, although not commanded by God, was obviously already known and voluntarily practiced and served to acknowledge God's providential beneficence in the donor's life. Jacob may have been bargaining with God as if to buy his favor rather than purely worshiping God with his gift. But it is best to translate the if, verse 20, as since, and see Jacob's vow and offering as genuine worship based on confidence in God's promise.
So he's saying that if is not a good translation. It should be since.
Yes. And that's it.
Gretchen?
Sorry. Jacob dedication. Jacob the homeboy is now without a home and is starting on a 500-mile trek to Haran. He was fleeing from an angry brother and facing an unknown future, and all he had to depend on was his father's blessing. From now on, the homeboy would have to become a pilgrim and walk by faith. It was a 3-day journey to Bethel, and those first 3 days of his adventure must have been very difficult. Would Esau follow him and try to kill him? Would he have enough food to keep him going? When he decided to spend the night at Bethel, there's a footnote there. It was Jacob who gave Luz the name Bethel, which means house of God. The new name is used in Genesis 12:8 and 13:3. Because by the time Moses wrote Genesis, Bethel was the name his readers knew best. Unfortunately, Bethel became an idolatrous shrine in later years, and then the prophets denounced it. It has reference to Amos and Hosea. King Josiah destroyed the shrine. He had no idea that God would meet him there, and from that night on, Bethel was a very special place to Jacob. A significant dream. Jacob slept on the earth with a stone for his headpiece, a common practice in the Near East. The stone was probably more a protection than a pillow. As he slept, he had a dream in which he saw a ladder or stairway with angels going up and down between heaven and earth. Jacob discovered that he wasn't alone, but that God was with him. The God of Abraham and Isaac was watching over him, and his angels were there to guard and serve him. As a footnote, Jesus applied this image to himself, for he is the mediator between God and man, and the living link between God and his people on earth. A significant declaration. Excuse me. Jacob saw the Lord above him and then heard him speak. The Lord didn't rebuke Jacob for participating in Rebekah's scheme. Instead, he spoke words of promise and assurance to him. The same God who had cared for his father and grandfather pledged to care for him and to give him the very land on which he was lying. He would also multiply his descendants and fulfill the promise to bring blessing through them to all the world. The Lord promised to be present with Jacob in whatever circumstances lay before him. In those days, people had the idea that when you left home, you left your God behind you. But the Lord of all the earth promised to go with Jacob, protect him, and one day bring him back home. No matter what happened, he would accomplish his will in and through Jacob. The promise of God's presence with his people is repeated often in Scripture, and it has references to Deuteronomy, Joshua, 1 Samuel, 1 Corinthians, Matthew, and Hebrews. Indeed, the God of Jacob is our fortress. God would appear to Jacob at least 5 more times in the years ahead, but first meeting with a significant one. He learned that God was interested in him and was at work in his life. From that night on, as long as he trusted the Lord and obeyed his will, he had nothing to fear. A significant decision. On awakening, Jacob's first response was one of fear and surprise. God was in that place, and he didn't know it, but the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. So Jacob's response was the right one. He discovered that he could find God in unlikely places, and that his place is the house of God, which is Bethel, because God is there. He would be away from his father's house for at least 20 years, but the Lord would be his dwelling place, no matter where he went. His next act was to worship the God who had appeared to him. He turned the headpiece into a pillar to memorialize the great experience that had been his that night. By pouring oil on the stone, he consecrated it to the Lord. He didn't use the stone as an altar or make a sacrifice. He simply set it apart as a memorial. In later Hebrew liturgy, the pouring out of liquid was a symbolic of pouring one's life out in devotion to the Lord. But most important, Jacob dedicated himself to the Lord that morning and claimed the promises that God had made to him. And if found in many translations of verse 20 can also be read since. Jacob wasn't making a bargain with God. He was affirming his faith in God. Since God had promised to care for him, be with him, and bring him back home safely, then Jacob would affirm his faith in God and would seek to worship and honor him alone. Jacob didn't have an easy life in the years that followed, for though God forgave his sins and was with him in his journeys, Jacob suffered the consequences of his sins. God in his grace forgives us, but God in his righteous government sees to it that we reap what we sow. Jacob had deceived Isaac, but his father-in-law Laban lied to Jacob and deceived him. Jacob used a kid to deceive his father, and Jacob's son used a kid to deceive their father. During the years he worked for Laban, Jacob endured many trials, both as a shepherd and as the husband of 4 wives and a father of many children. The thing that kept him going when the going was tough was his faith in the promise of God. God promised to be with him, and that's what Jacob depended on. And the Lord didn't fail him, nor will he fail us. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Psalm 46:7. That's it.
Okay. I did look up if, and the Greek word is ie, and like words can have like deeper meanings, and the deeper meaning is since. That's agreed on by most scholars, it says. 10 through 12. Jacob, now a fugitive on the run, found himself at an ordinary place. His circumstances were so grim that the only pillow he had was a rock. And yet, in this ordinary place, in these dire circumstances, he would soon have an extraordinary experience. That night, he dreamed that a staircase or stairway was set on the ground with its top reaching the sky, and God's angels were going up and down on it. Jacob was watching divine activity at work, even in a messy human situation. Prior to this dream, all he could see was the mess, but God opened his eyes to a spiritual reality that transformed his viewpoint. 13. Not only were there angels marching up and down the stairway, but also the Lord was standing there beside Jacob. God, you see, was watching over Jacob even before Jacob had begun dreaming. Now Jacob got to see it. Jacob, 14 and 15. Jacob didn't just get a vision from God. He also got a word from God. The word for Jacob was a confirmation of the promise to Abraham and Isaac. Your offspring will be like the dust of the earth, and all the people on earth will be blessed through you. This is the first time Jacob heard that promise from God himself. It wasn't new information, but the information became real because he finally realized that it was God's promise. God often does something familiar for us, confirming what we may have heard 1,000 times through hymns or preaching or reading the Bible, but for whatever reason, he illuminates that word so that we hear the Spirit speaking to us. 16. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he immediately recognized what had happened. Surely the Lord is in this place, he concluded. Reminds me of the song. And I did not know it. The place had not changed. It was still just a desert with only a rock for a pillow. But in that place, God showed up. He showed up to Jacob in his brokenness and weariness because he needed Jacob to come to the end of himself before he could begin relying on God. Isn't that how it always works? 17. We know Jacob had a fresh encounter with God because he was afraid, no longer afraid of Esau, but afraid of the one true God. A lesser fear had been driven out by a greater fear because the power of God overruled the power of Esau. 28:18 to 22. Jacob had fallen asleep in a certain place, but having seen God, he woke up and gave the place a sacred name, Bethel. What had been a dark place became a sacred place. Nothing had changed in Jacob's circumstances. All that had changed was Jacob getting a fresh vision of God, and that transformed everything. The pagan city of Luz, L-U-Z, suddenly became Bethel, literally the house of God. Jacob poured oil on top of the very same stone that had been his rough pillow, making it the cornerstone of an altar to God. And Jacob made a vow to God, promising to give him a tenth. He sanctified this dark location, recognizing the supernatural at work, invisibly right there in the gritty and tough natural world. The end. Any last minute thoughts? Anything anybody wants to share? If not, it's time for trivia. Oh, you guys will all know this one. See who gets it first. Here we go. What did Solomon have 700 of?
Wives.
Wives.
Florida beat everybody again. Yep.
Wives.
700 wives. 1 Kings 11, verse 3. Don't forget, tomorrow morning we are meeting early, 8:30. So I'll try to send out a little reminder in the morning. This concludes the reading of God's word for today. Until tomorrow.
For sure.
For sure.
See you then.